The air in the auction hall was thick with sweat, coin, and cruelty. Shackled, Arya stood under the blazing torchlight, her wrists raw where the iron bit her skin. The auctioneer's voice boomed, sharp as a whip. Lot 17, an Omega female. Useless, wolfless, no breeding value. Who'll take the runt? Laughter erupted from the crowd of alphas and betas lounging on velvet seats. Arya's stomach twisted, her throat tight, but she refused to drop her gaze. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. "She's cursed," a woman hissed from the front. "Her wolf never awakened. Pathetic." Arya's jaw trembled, but she held still. The whispers grew like venom in her ears. Useless, cursed, trash. They had branded her failure since birth, and now they were selling her as if she were livestock. Then the crowd hushed. He entered. Alpha Kyle. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence alone suffocated the air. His reputation preceded him, ruthless, feared, merciless. The auctioneer nearly tripped over himself, bowing. "Alpha Kyle, surely a man of your power deserves—" "Her," Kale said coldly, cutting through the words. His finger lifted toward Arya, his eyes like burning steel. "I'll take her." The hall erupted in shock. Gasps, protests, even laughter. "Why waste coin on that?" someone sneered. "She won't last a week in his pack," another chuckled. But Kyle didn't waver. He tossed a pouch of gold onto the stage. Done. The chains around Arya were unhooked, and she staggered forward, her pride cracking like glass. Sold, like property. She kept her chin high, even as shame scalded her skin. As Kale's hand closed around her arm, she flinched. His grip was like iron, yet oddly steady. For the briefest moment, his eyes flickered, as though seeing something no one else could. Her pulse thundered. Beneath her skin, something stirred. A flicker of warmth, a tremor of power. It was gone in an instant, leaving her dizzy. Dragged through the hall, jeers and whispers following, Arya refused to cry. She would not give them that. Not now, not ever. Outside, the night was colder than bone. Kyle pushed her into a waiting carriage without a word. His pack warriors stared at her with open disgust. "Why take a useless Omega Alpha?" one of them muttered. Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Because I don't waste coin. She has a use. I'll find it." The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed her, save for the faint moonlight slipping through the cracks. Alone, Arya let herself exhale. Her wrists burned, her heart raged. "I am not useless." But the words rang hollow against the memory of the crowd's laughter. As the carriage rattled away into the night, Arya felt it again. A low hum in her veins, like a wolf's growl waiting to rise. Her eyes widened, breath catching. For the first time in her life, something deep within her stirred. And in the shadows beyond the torchlight, unseen by all, a pair of golden eyes watched the carriage vanish into the night. A figure cloaked in black whispered to himself, his voice like smoke. "She doesn't even know what she is yet." The mysterious watcher steps into the light, revealing the crest of Kale's brother's pack on his cloak. The carriage rumbled to a stop before the gates of Kale's fortress-like pack house. Torches flickered against towering stone walls, casting long shadows across snarling wolf statues that lined the entrance. The gates groaned open, and the moment Arya stepped down, the sneers began. "She reeks of weakness. Why would Alpha soil his halls with that? She won't last the night." Their laughter cut sharper than any blade, but Arya lifted her chin. She had endured worse. Kyle didn't bother silencing them. His hand clamped around her wrist, dragging her across the courtyard as though she weighed nothing. The massive double doors swung open, revealing a hall glittering with firelight and cruelty. He tossed her forward. Arya stumbled, landing hard on the polished stone floor. Gasps and chuckles rippled through the gathered wolves. "This is what you bought, Alpha?" a beta scoffed. "She can't even stand." Kale's voice was cold steel. "She will serve, or she will break. That is all." His indifference stung worse than their insults. To him, she was nothing more than property, a tool, a use. Hours later, they threw her into a chamber no better than a cell, a narrow bed, barred window, and walls that pressed in like a cage. She curled up, trembling in silence. Rage warred with despair in her chest, but exhaustion pulled her under. That was when the vision came. Darkness swallowed her, endless and suffocating. Then, a flicker. Shadows folding into the shape of a massive wolf. Its fur shimmered like obsidian licked by fire, flames crawling across its body in patterns that looked like ancient runes. Its eyes, molten gold, pinned her in place. Arya. The voice was not a sound, but a vibration, deep in her bones. Her breath hitched. "Who are you?" she whispered. The wolf stepped closer, its heat overwhelming. Flames coiled around her wrists, searing yet not burning, as though branding her with something unseen. "You are not useless. You are mine. And soon, they will all bow." Her heart thundered. Power surged in her veins, alien and wild, as though something long dormant clawed awake. Her hands trembled, light sparking faintly along her skin. Then, the vision shattered. She gasped awake, chest heaving, sweat slicking her brow. The flames were gone, but the hum in her blood remained, and she wasn't alone. Kyle stood over her bed, his shadow blotting out the moonlight. His eyes burned with a fury she couldn't read, molten and sharp, as though he had seen something. His voice was low, dangerous. "What are you?" The question pierced the air, heavy with suspicion, almost fear. Arya froze, heart slamming against her ribs. She didn't have an answer, but for the first time in her life she realized maybe she would. Kale grips her chin, forcing her to meet his blazing eyes as the strange hum in her veins surges hotter, threatening to break free. Kale's grip tightened on Arya's chin, his golden eyes drilling into hers, searching, demanding. The energy in her veins flared again, threatening to burst free. But just as suddenly, he released her, stepping back with a sharp growl. "Get up!" She blinked, disoriented. "What? Up!" he barked. His command was absolute, heavy with alpha authority, forcing her body to obey even as her legs shook beneath her. Before she could steady herself, Kale dragged her out into the cold night. The packhouse torches still burned, their glow illuminating the courtyard where wolves lingered, curious and eager for cruelty. The whispers started immediately. "She's still alive? The alpha brings her out already? This will be amusing." Kyle didn't slow, hauling her toward the training grounds. The scent of sweat, blood, and dirt filled the air as warriors sparred, their eyes snapping to Arya the moment she stumbled into view. "Fight!" Kyle commanded, his tone flat as he released her wrist. Her heart lurched. "What?" "You want to stay in my pack, you prove you're not dead weight." His gaze flickered briefly. Was it at her trembling hands, or the shadow of something he thought he saw earlier? She couldn't tell. From the crowd, a wolf stepped forward, a towering beta with cruel eyes and a grin that promised pain. "I'll break her quickly, Alpha," he said, cracking his knuckles. Arya's throat tightened. This wasn't training. This was slaughter. The beta lunged. His fist collided with her ribs, sending her sprawling to the dirt. Laughter erupted around them. "Pathetic? Useless Omega!" She coughed, blood on her lips, her body screaming in agony. The beta kicked her again, forcing the air from her lungs. Somewhere above the jeers, she heard Kale's voice, cold and unyielding. "Stand." Her body trembled. She wanted to stay down, to surrender. But something inside her, that humming ember from the vision, refused. She pushed up on shaky arms, glaring at the beta through bloodied lips. "You don't get to kill me," she whispered. The beta snarled and charged again. His fist descended. And then it happened. The air warped. Shadows rippled around Arya's body, curling like smoke, wrapping her broken frame in an otherworldly aura. The ground beneath her vibrated, as though the earth itself recoiled from what was awakening. Her eyes widened. She wasn't shifting. There was no wolf form bursting from her skin. Instead, the shadows twisted, manifesting claws that weren't there. Her veins burned with fire, but her body felt lighter, freer. The beta's punch never landed. He froze, his scream ripping through the arena as invisible claws slashed across his arm, tearing flesh open in brutal, unseen strikes. Blood sprayed across the dirt. Gasps tore through the watching pack. No wolf! Impossible! What is she? Arya's chest heaved, her body still battered and broken, but her aura flared darker, hungrier, like a beast just waking. She didn't even know how she had done it, only that something inside her wasn't done fighting. Kyle's expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with dangerous fascination. The beta stumbled back, clutching his shredded arm, shrieking. She's cursed! Arya stood there trembling, shadows still flickering like fire licking her skin, her gaze locking with Kale's. She wasn't useless anymore. The crowd erupts in fear and outrage as Kale steps into the ring, his voice low and sharp. Enough! Whatever she is, she's mine. The training grounds crackled with chaos. Whispers surged like wildfire as the crowd shrank back from Arya. Her chest still heaved, her body aching, but the shadows that had flickered around her had faded, like they had never existed at all. She's cursed, one warrior hissed, dragging his injured beta away. No wolf, no shift, just darkness. She should be executed. Arya staggered, the weight of their words heavier than her bruises. The old shame, the voice that always called her useless, rose again. Only this time, it was worse, because now they weren't wrong. She was different, dangerous. But Kyle didn't order her death. Instead, he stood still in the middle of the ring, his golden eyes locked on her like a hunter studying prey too valuable to kill. When he finally spoke, his voice carried sharp authority. Enough. The whispers died instantly. Whatever she is. His gaze didn't waver, his words slicing through the night. She's mine. The pack fell silent, though fear rippled through them. Arya's heart hammered, confusion and terror twisting in her gut. She didn't understand what had happened, or why Kale, of all people, was protecting her. That night, Kale dismissed her without explanation. 2 guards dragged her back to the lonely chamber at the edge of the pack house. The door slammed, the lock clicked, and she was left trembling in the dark. Her body throbbed with pain, but worse was the gnawing question, what am I? Sleep came in ragged bursts, and with it, another vision. The shadows gathered again, pooling in the corner of the room until they shaped themselves into a wolf. Its form was not flesh and fur, but smoke and flame, glowing with eyes like molten silver. Who are you? Arya whispered, clutching her blanket to her chest. The creature tilted its head. Its voice was layered, deep and echoing, neither male nor female. You already know. I am what you deny. What sleeps inside you. Her breath caught. You're my wolf? Its form rippled with laughter that wasn't human. I am more. But you cannot hold me back forever. You must accept the bond. Her skin prickled. The word bond echoed like a key turning in a lock, stirring something in her chest. But before she could ask, the wolf stepped forward, shadows licking closer like firelight. Choose, Arya. Accept me, or be devoured by me. She jolted awake, gasping, the last trace of the shadow wolf lingering in the dark corners of her chamber. Her body was trembling, not just with fear, but with a strange ache she couldn't name. And then, her door slammed open. Kale strode inside, his presence filling the room like a storm. His golden eyes burned, sharper than ever, and his voice was low, dangerous. Why? He demanded, his chest rising and falling with restrained fury. Do you smell of power? Arya froze, every nerve in her body on fire as his gaze pinned her down. She didn't have an answer. She didn't even understand herself. But Kyle wasn't asking. He was hunting. Kyle's golden eyes blazed in the darkness of Arya's chamber. The weight of his alpha aura pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. His voice was a blade sharpened with command. Tell me what you are." Arya's lips trembled, but no answer came. She had none to give. Kyle stepped closer, his power thrumming in the air like a storm about to break. She felt it coil around her throat, his dominance pushing, pressing, an order her wolfless body should never have been able to resist. "Submit," he growled, his alpha command laced into the word, designed to shatter her will. Her knees buckled as the force hit her, her body shaking under the crushing weight. Every Omega was conditioned to obey. Every bone in her body screamed to bow, to kneel, to surrender. But something inside her rebelled, her vision blurred, shadows rippled at the edges, curling like smoke, whispering with 1,000 voices. The echo of the wolf she had seen in her dreams stirred in her chest, deep and defiant. "No." The word slipped out, raw, shaking, but it was enough. Kyle froze, his golden eyes widening as if he hadn't heard correctly. No Omega had ever disobeyed an alpha command. "Say that again." His voice was sharp, but beneath it was disbelief. Arya straightened, her body trembling, but she forced the word out stronger this time. "No." The air snapped. Kale's wolf surged forward, his growl reverberating through the chamber, primal and enraged. His power flared hotter, heavier, nearly crushing her against the stone wall. "Defy me again, and I will—" But then it happened. A heat ignited in her chest, searing through flesh and bone. Arya gasped, clutching at her sternum as shadows erupted outward in a violent surge. The air cracked like lightning. Kyle staggered, the blast slamming into him with invisible force. His body hit the ground on one knee, his wolf snarling in protest, but unable to rise against it. His golden eyes flickered with shock as the dark aura spread across the room, coiling like a living thing. Arya stood frozen in the center, her breath ragged, eyes wide as the shadow flame pulsed from her heart. Her silhouette burned against the darkness, her hair lifted as though caught in an unseen wind. "What?" Kale rasped, his teeth bared, his hand pressed into the ground to steady himself. "What are you?" But she didn't know. The shadows writhed, forming claw-like streaks that marked the stone walls, as though declaring ownership. The force receded as quickly as it had erupted, leaving the chamber trembling with silence. Arya collapsed back against the wall, her chest heaving, skin damp with sweat. She could still feel the echo of that power thrumming inside her veins. Kale's golden eyes locked on her, burning not with disdain this time, but with something darker. Interest, possession, and something he would never admit aloud: fear. He rose slowly, towering over her again, his wolf growling low in his chest, unsettled by what it had felt. "You are not useless," he said finally, voice hoarse. "You are something else. Something dangerous." Arya flinched, her hands trembling, but she didn't lower her gaze. For the first time in her life, she had stood against an alpha, and survived. But she had no idea what price that defiance would demand. In the silence that followed, the dark energy flared once more inside her chest, faint but undeniable, like a mark burned into her soul. And Kale's final whisper before leaving froze her blood. "If you can resist me, then maybe you were not sold to me. Maybe you were sent." Arya sat slumped against the stone wall long after Kale left her chamber. Her chest still throbbed where the dark power had erupted, like embers burning under her skin. She didn't understand what had happened. All she knew was that she had defied him, the Alpha King himself, and lived to tell it. But what terrified her more was the way his eyes had lingered before he left. Not with contempt, as they had since the moment she was sold to him, but with calculation, hunger. The next morning, the pack was restless. Whispers moved through corridors and courtyards like wildfire. Omegas peeked at her through doorways. Warriors stiffened as she passed. No one dared speak it aloud, but Kyle had not punished her defiance, nor executed her for resisting his command. That alone was unheard of. By nightfall, Kyle convened a secret council with his closest advisors, but not in the grand hall. Too many ears. Instead, he called the elders to the shadowed war chamber deep within the pack house. She resisted, Kale said flatly, pacing with his arms crossed. His golden eyes flickered as though the memory still burned. Not just resisted, she repelled me. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. One, an ancient with hair white as ash, leaned on his staff. There are stories, whispers of a bloodline long thought dead. The shadow-born wolf. Kale stilled. A myth. Perhaps, the elder rasped. Or perhaps not. The shadow-born were said to be creatures of flame and darkness. Wolves not born of moonlight, but of shadow itself. They did not bow to alphas. Alphas bowed to them. The words struck the room like a thunderclap. Even Kale's wolf snarled uneasily within him, unsettled by the idea. Do you mean to tell me, Kale growled, that girl, that Omega, is tied to this legend? She is not wolfless, Alpha, the elder murmured. She is something else, something dangerous. Dangerous, the same word Kale himself had spoken last night. Yet as much as he wanted to deny it, part of him couldn't stop remembering the moment she defied him, the fire in her eyes, the shadows dancing like armor around her fragile body. Something primal had stirred inside him, something his wolf hated but his man couldn't ignore. He dismissed the council with a snarl, ordering silence on the matter. If the pack suspected too much, chaos would erupt, but even as the elders shuffled away, the word Shadowborn clawed at his mind. Meanwhile, Arya tossed in her bed, drenched in sweat. The shadow wolf appeared in her dreams again, closer than before, its eyes burning with crimson fire. Accept me, it whispered, its voice layered, ancient and commanding. Accept the bond, or be consumed. She woke with a cry, clutching her chest, the mark of shadow still glowing faintly beneath her skin. And Kale was there again, in the doorway, watching with those unreadable golden eyes. You're hiding something, he said, his tone low and dangerous, and I'm going to find out what. Before Arya could answer, the horn of alarm shattered the night. The walls trembled with the thunder of war drums. A scout burst through the courtyard, shouting loud enough for all the pack to hear. Alpha, the Crimson Fang approaches. Their Alpha has declared war. He says the girl you bought belongs to him. Arya's heart stopped cold. Kale turned sharply toward her, his golden eyes blazing as the truth settled in. Arya wasn't just his problem anymore. She was about to start a war. The war drums shook the night sky, their thunder echoing across the valley. Torches burned on the horizon, a sea of crimson fire as the Crimson Fang pack advanced, their howls splitting the darkness. The courtyard boiled with chaos as Kale's warriors rushed to the walls, steel and claws ready for blood. Arya stood frozen in the center of it all, her breath shallow, her body trembling. She could feel it, the pull in her chest, the restless clawing of the shadow wolf inside her, begging to be released. The whispers hissed in her mind. Let me out. I can end this. Let me out. Kyle grabbed her arm, his grip rough but steady, forcing her to look at him. You will stay inside. Do you hear me? Stay out of this. Before she could argue, he shoved her toward two guards. Lock her in the eastern wing. If she leaves, slit throats before she takes a step out. Arya's protests were drowned by the blare of the battle horn as Kale shifted mid-stride, his golden wolf bursting forth in a flash of fur and fury. He leapt into the fray, a storm of snarls and tearing flesh. His warriors followed, the clash of fangs and steel ringing into the night. Arya was dragged through the halls, her wrists aching from their grip. They threw her into the eastern chamber and barred the doors, iron and wood sealing her fate. She pressed her forehead against the door, listening. Screams, growls, the sound of her captor, her alpha, fighting for his pack. And still, the voice whispered, They will die. He will fall, unless you let me out. Arya staggered back, clutching her chest. Her heart raced like a drum, her breath sharp. Shadows curled at her fingertips, thin tendrils of smoke that pulsed like veins of fire. She gasped, terrified and mesmerized all at once. Outside, the siege was relentless. The Crimson Fang Alpha, a brute with scars carved across his jaw, had come himself. He towered in wolf form, his red-flecked fur bristling as he clashed with Kyle. The ground shook as the two alphas collided, teeth sinking into flesh, claws raking across bone. Blood slicked the stones. Kale fought with feral precision, but for every enemy he tore down, two more pressed in. His warriors faltered under the weight of the attack. For the first time in years, Kale's dominance wavered. Inside her chamber, Arya's shadow wolf howled within her skull, a cry so loud it rattled her bones. She pressed her palms against her temples, desperate to shut it out. "Unleash me, or they will all burn without you." A scream tore from her throat as the shadows exploded outward. The barred door splintered like paper, sending guards flying across the corridor. Arya stumbled forward, her aura alive and blazing, dark fire swirling around her like a storm, her eyes glowing with unnatural light. She stepped into the chaos of the courtyard just as a wave of enemy wolves broke through the outer gate. Her aura pulsed, unseen claws sweeping the air. The attackers were thrown backward, bodies slamming into stone walls as though crushed by invisible hands. Every eye, friend and foe, snapped to her. Even Kale froze mid-battle, his golden wolf standing bloodied and stunned, watching her shadowy aura ripple through the battlefield. Arya's chest heaved, her hands trembling, shadows dancing across her skin. She didn't understand how, but she had stopped them. She had broken free. The Crimson Fang Alpha snarled, his eyes burning as he pointed his claw at her. "It's true," he bellowed. "The Shadowborn lives. She's mine." The courtyard burned with chaos. Wolves ripped into flesh, warriors screamed, and fire licked the stone walls. Yet for one heartbeat, all was silence. All eyes were on Arya, her body bathed in dark flames, her aura surging like a living storm. The Crimson Fang Alpha's declaration rang across the battlefield. "The Shadowborn lives. She's mine." Kyle's golden wolf snarled, blood dripping from his jaws as his gaze locked on Arya. Something primal shifted inside him, awe, fury, desire, all tangled into one. But there was no time to think. The enemy Alpha lunged straight for her, his massive claws raised to tear her apart. "No!" Kale roared, throwing himself between them. The rival Alpha's strike ripped across Kale's shoulder, blood spraying into the air. He staggered but held his ground, bracing himself for the next blow. Before it could fall, the shadows surged. Arya gasped as invisible claws burst from her aura, catching the Crimson Fang Alpha mid-strike and hurling him across the courtyard. He slammed into a wall with bone-cracking force, stones collapsing around him. Gasps rose from every side. No wolf had touched him, only her. Arya stumbled forward, her limbs trembling as though every movement cost her strength. Yet still, the shadow wolf inside her whispered, guiding her hands. When enemy wolves rushed Kale from behind, her aura lashed out like a whip, striking them down in a single sweep. The battle turned. Warriors of Kale's pack rallied behind her, their courage reignited by the sight of the useless Omega wielding power beyond comprehension. Even Kale himself froze for a moment, staring at her with something he had never given anyone, reverence. Bloodied and battered, Kale shifted back to his human form, his chest heaving. For the first time, his head dipped slightly as his eyes met hers. It was not submission, but it was acknowledgement. "Arya." His voice was hoarse, something unspoken caught in his throat. But Arya couldn't answer. Her body trembled violently, the shadows flickering around her like a dying flame. With a strangled gasp, she fell to her knees. Kyle darted forward, catching her before she collapsed fully onto the blood-soaked stones. Her skin was cold, her breath shallow. He shook her lightly, his voice rough with urgency. "Stay with me, Arya. Stay." Her eyes fluttered shut. Darkness swallowed her whole, and within that darkness, the shadow wolf emerged. Its form was vast and terrible, a beast woven from fire and endless night, its eyes twin voids that gleamed with dangerous promise. It circled her in the dreamscape, its voice a low rumble that reverberated through her bones. "You touched his pride tonight. You made him bow his head. But hear me, Shadowborn." The wolf's fangs gleamed as it leaned close, breath like smoke and fire. "He will bow fully when you claim him." Arya jolts in the dream, gasping as the Shadow Wolf's words sink deep into her soul. Arya jolted awake, her breath ragged, her heart pounding as the last words of the Shadow Wolf echoed in her ears. He will bow fully when you claim him. Her eyes flicked open to find herself not in the battlefield, but in Kale's chamber, lying on a bed draped in dark furs. Firelight from the hearth painted shadows on the stone walls. She tried to sit up, but her limbs felt heavy, drained from whatever force had torn through her during the fight. And then she saw him. Kyle sat in the corner, his arm bandaged from the rival Alpha's attack. His golden eyes burned into her like molten amber, sharp and unrelenting. He rose, each step deliberate, predatory, until he stood at her bedside. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice low and edged with both awe and suspicion. Arya swallowed, her throat dry. I don't know. I swear I don't." His hand slammed against the headboard above her, caging her in. "Don't lie to me. I felt it. You resisted my command. You wielded power no Omega should even dream of. You could have destroyed us all. Or saved us." His tone softened, just barely. "Which are you, Arya?" She trembled beneath his gaze. "I'm nothing. I never asked for this. I don't even understand it." For the first time, Kale looked uncertain. His wolf stirred inside him, not with rage, but with something else, recognition almost. As though a bond he didn't choose was being forged against his will. But before he could speak further, a heavy knock echoed at the door. The elders entered. They bowed curtly to Kale, their gazes sliding to Arya with barely concealed disgust. "Alpha," the eldest rasped. "The girl is cursed. The Shadowborn is not a gift. It is a blight. Legends say such creatures bring ruin to packs. If you value your reign, end this now. Kill her before she consumes us all." Arya's stomach dropped. Kyle's jaw clenched. His wolf snarled within, but his expression remained hard. "She stays under my protection," he growled. "No one touches her." The elders exchanged grim looks, their whispers filling the chamber like a death knell. That night, as Kyle left to oversee repairs from the battle, Arya lay awake in silence. Every word of the elders replayed in her mind. Cursed, dangerous, a blight. She had spent her life being told she was worthless, and now that she held power, they wanted her gone more than ever. Restless, she slipped from the bed and wandered the halls. The moonlight spilling through the high windows made her shadow stretch unnaturally long behind her, almost like a second figure following her steps. And then she froze. Voices, low, hushed, but deadly serious. She pressed herself against the stone wall, listening. "Kyle is blind," one elder hissed. "He's letting his desire cloud his judgment. That girl is no Omega. She's a monster. If we wait, she'll destroy us all." "And if the Alpha won't act," another replied coldly, "then we must. Tomorrow night, we slip the poison into her cup. No one will question an Omega's sudden death. Kale will mourn, but the pack will survive." Arya's blood ran cold. Her hand flew to her lips to stifle the gasp clawing at her throat. Poison. They meant to kill her. Her heart hammered in her chest as the shadows on the wall thickened and swirled, almost as if the wolf inside her had heard the plot too, and was already stirring for vengeance. Arya staggers back into the moonlight, her face pale with fear. In the darkness, the Shadow Wolf's voice curls like smoke in her mind. "They wish to end you. Will you let them, or will you make them bow?" Arya pressed her back against the cold stone wall, the elder's whispers still burning in her ears. Poison. Death. Tomorrow night. The Shadow Wolf's warning coiled inside her chest, urging her to act. But what could she do? Kyle didn't trust her fully. The pack despised her. She was alone. Or so she thought. "Arya?" a voice murmured softly behind her. She spun, ready to fight, only to find Kale's younger brother, Lucian, standing in the moonlit corridor. He was leaner than Kyle, his features softer but no less striking, raven dark hair framing storm gray eyes that carried none of Kale's coldness. "You shouldn't be wandering at night," he whispered, concern flickering across his face. "I heard them. she whispered back, trembling. The elders. They want me dead. They said, poison. Lucian's jaw tightened. He looked down the hall, then gently took her arm. Come, you can't stay here. He led her through a hidden stairwell, down into a quieter wing of the pack house. They stopped in a small chamber lit by a single lantern. It smelled faintly of herbs and parchment. They've been muttering for days, Lucian admitted, shutting the door. I tried to warn my brother, but he wouldn't listen. He never listens. He thinks he can shoulder the world alone. His eyes softened as he looked at her. But you shouldn't have to fight for your life under his roof. Arya blinked at him, startled by his gentleness. She had expected more disdain, more mockery. Instead, his gaze held warmth, a quiet protectiveness that felt alien after years of cruelty. You believe me? She asked, her voice cracking. I do. His lips curved into the barest smile. And I'll protect you, whatever it takes. Her chest tightened. No one had ever said those words to her, not her family, not Kale. For a fleeting moment, she let herself lean into the comfort of Lucian's presence. But the shadow within her stirred uneasily, like a jealous beast in chains. The next evening, as the feast began, Arya's stomach coiled in dread. The elders moved among the long tables, their hands discreet as they poured wine into her cup. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. But just before she could drink, Lucian's hand shot out, seizing the goblet. He lifted it, sniffed, then poured its contents into the fire. The flames flared green, hissing violently. Gasps rippled through the hall. Arya's blood turned to ice. They mean to kill you, Lucian whispered urgently. He took her hand beneath the table. Stay close to me tonight. Her heart hammered. For once, she wasn't entirely alone. Later, in the quiet of the gardens, Lucian walked her beneath the moonlight. His fingers brushed hers, tentative but deliberate. You're not useless, Arya, he said softly. Whatever you are, it's powerful, beautiful. Don't let them take it from you. Her breath caught, her body torn between fear, gratitude, and something else she didn't dare name. The shadows curled at her feet, restless. And then, a growl split the night. Kyle stood at the edge of the garden, his golden eyes blazing like fire. His chest rose and fell with violent breaths, his fists clenched. But it wasn't just Kyle who reacted. His wolf surged to the surface, a roar ripping from his throat so loud it made the earth tremble. Lucian instantly stepped in front of Arya, shielding her. Kyle's wolf thundered inside him, his voice raw with primal rage as his gaze locked on Arya and Lucian together. Mine. Kyle's voice was more growl than word, his eyes blazing with feral heat. The air in the garden thickened with his wolf's dominance, crushing, suffocating. Arya staggered back as shadows quivered around her feet. Brother, Lucian began, standing tall in front of her. Step aside. Kyle's roar shattered the silence, startling the ravens from the nearby trees. The earth itself seemed to quake under the weight of his fury. But Lucian didn't move. He planted himself like a shield before Arya, his eyes steady. She was about to be poisoned, Kale. I saved her. And you, he gestured at Kale's trembling fists, weren't there. That single truth struck harder than any blade. For a moment, Kale faltered, but his wolf surged again, raging at the sight of Arya standing behind Lucian, clutching his arm as though he were her savior. Jealousy burned hotter than fire. With a snarl, Kyle lunged forward, his hand seizing Arya's wrist. He yanked her away from Lucian with such force she gasped. You dare defy me, he hissed, his breath hot against her ear. Arya's heart thundered. I never asked to be here. I never asked for any of this, she shouted back, surprising even herself with her boldness. The shadows flared around her, answering her fury. Kale's eyes flickered in shock, and then, just as quickly, hardened. He dragged her through the halls, ignoring the murmurs of startled pack members, and threw her into her chamber with a slam of the door. His chest rose and fell like a storm barely restrained. You think you can shame me? Make me lose control in front of my pack? His voice cracked with a rawness that wasn't just anger. It was fear. Do you know what that means for an alpha? Arya trembled but met his gaze. Maybe you're afraid because you can't control me. The words cut deep. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Kyle turned away, fists clenched, as though fighting the urge to strike the walls. His wolf paced inside him like a caged beast, demanding dominance, demanding she submit. But when Kale looked back, there was something else in his eyes. Something dangerously close to desperation. You will not break me, Arya, he growled, and you will not belong to anyone else. He stormed out, leaving her shaking, her heart both terrified and defiant. Later that night, Lucian slipped into her chamber, his face grave. You need to understand, he said in a hushed tone. This isn't just jealousy. You're part of something older, bigger. The prophecy of the Shadowborn. You are the key, Arya, whether you wish it or not. Kale isn't protecting you. He's binding you, using you as a pawn. Her breath caught. Prophecy? Shadowborn? Before Lucian could answer, searing pain ripped through her wrist. Arya cried out, clutching her arm as a fiery brand blazed to life on her skin. Lucian's eyes widened. No, it's happening already. Glowing black and crimson, a jagged mark unfurled across her wrist. A wolf of shadow and flame, encircled by runes older than any language she knew. The air hummed with power, heavy and undeniable. The seal of the Shadowborn. Arya's eyes widened in horror as the mark burned hotter, and a whisper, ancient, echoing, inhuman, slithered through her mind. The night of reckoning begins. The mark burned like molten fire, its glow painting the walls of Arya's chamber in black and crimson hues. She bit back a scream, her body trembling as the whisper coiled in her mind. The night of reckoning begins. Lucian gripped her shoulders. Arya, this is no ordinary bond mark. This is the seal of the Shadowborn. It means you've been chosen. Before she could respond, the door crashed open. Kyle strode in, his eyes immediately locking on the mark seared across her wrist. His pupils dilated, his wolf thrashing inside him like a beast chained too tightly. What did you do? He demanded, his voice a mixture of accusation and something close to fear. I didn't do anything, Arya shot back, her breath ragged. It just appeared. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the corridor. The elders entered, their robes whispering against the stone floors. They froze at the sight of Arya's wrist, and all at once their faces turned pale. One elder fell to his knees, his voice shaking. The prophecy, it has awakened. Another whispered sharply, Shadowborn, after 1,000 years, the seal has returned. Kyle stepped forward, his authority demanding answers. Speak plainly. The eldest among them, with eyes clouded by age, raised his trembling hand toward Arya. Once every millennium, the Shadowborn wolf is reborn. A creature born not of flesh and bone, but of shadow and fire. Its power eclipses that of any alpha. It can enslave the bloodlines of wolves, or free them. And she, he gestured to Arya, is its vessel. The chamber's air thickened. Murmurs erupted among the elders and warriors alike, some in awe, others in fear. Arya's heart pounded. You're saying I'm supposed to rule over alphas? No, the elder corrected softly. You are meant to decide their fate. Kyle's jaw tightened. His wolf pressed against his skin, restless, feral. His pack looked to him for strength, for answers, but Kyle himself could not pull his eyes from Arya. She was supposed to be weak, useless, and yet, standing before him, the shadows curling protectively at her feet, she radiated a power that made his chest ache with something he refused to name. She's a danger, one elder spat. We must end her before the prophecy consumes us all. The silence in the great hall was suffocating. The only sound was the harsh rhythm of Kale's breath as his wolf knelt before Arya, head bowed low, eyes blazing but submissive. The entire pack stood frozen, their alpha brought to his knees by the girl they had scorned. No, Arya whispered, stumbling back as shadows curled around her ankles like chains she hadn't asked for. Her chest heaved, panic tightening her ribs. Don't bow to me. You're the alpha. You're supposed to fight it. Kyle's claws scraped the stone floor as he struggled to rise, his body trembling under the weight of an invisible command. His lips curled back in a snarl, but it wasn't directed at her. It was at himself. I can't, he ground out, his voice gravelly, strained. My wolf, it yields. Gasps rippled through the court. Warriors exchanged horrified glances, some instinctively lowering their heads toward Arya in a half-bow, unsure if the instinct to submit applied to them too. Arya shook her head violently. No, stop it. I'm not your alpha. Her voice cracked, her fear ringing out like a plea. But the mark on her wrist pulsed, dark veins of shadow flickering up her arm. For a split second she felt it, the intoxicating rush of dominance, raw and undeniable. It was like the world itself bent beneath her feet, and Kyle's submission only deepened the pull. It terrified her. The eldest elder stepped forward, his voice low but carrying. The prophecy begins. The Shadowborn rises, and alphas will bow. Kale snapped his gaze to the elder, his eyes burning with barely contained fury, but still, he remained on his knees. Humiliation cut through him like a blade, but beneath it was something darker, an unshakable need. His wolf wasn't humiliated. His wolf was satisfied. Lucian moved to Arya's side, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. This isn't your fault, he murmured, though his jaw was tight. But if you let it, this power will consume you. Arya met Kyle's eyes, desperation swelling in her chest. Fight it, Kyle. Please. For the first time, his gaze softened, not with mercy, but with an almost feral reverence. You don't understand, he said hoarsely. It's not something I can fight. You are Shadowborn. My wolf knows it, and it would rather bow than defy you. Arya stumbled back as the pack erupted into chaos. Some wolves howled in protest, others shouted accusations at the elders, while whispers spread like wildfire. Their alpha had bent knee. Before order could return, the heavy doors of the hall slammed open. The stench of foreign wolves swept in like a bitter wind. Warriors in dark armor flooded the entrance, parting to reveal a towering figure. Broad, scarred, and carrying an aura that clawed at the very walls. The rival alpha. His eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction as they fell on Arya. So it's true, he drawled, lips curling into a predatory grin. The Shadowborn has awakened. His gaze slid to Kale, still on his knees, and he let out a mocking laugh. The mighty alpha, bowing like a dog. Kale's growl reverberated through the chamber, but his body remained lowered, bound by instinct. The rival alpha stepped forward, voice booming through the hall. Surrender her to me. The Shadowborn belongs under my command. Refuse. He spread his arms wide as if inviting the bloodshed to begin. And war will consume every last one of you. Arya's mark burned like fire, the shadows whispering violently in her ears. Choose, or all will burn. And for the first time, she realized the fate of two alphas, and perhaps the world itself, rested in her trembling hands. The rival alpha's demand hung like smoke in the air, choking the hall. Shadows still writhed around Arya, their whispers sharp as knives. Choose, or all will burn. Kale fought against the instinct pinning him down, claws gouging deep into the stone floor, but still his wolf refused to rise. Rage blazed in his eyes as he glared at the intruder. You dare enter my hall? The rival alpha cut him off with a dark chuckle. He flicked his wrist, and his warriors dragged a figure forward, beaten and bound. Lucian. Arya gasped, rushing a step closer before Kale's growl stopped her. Lucian's lip bled, but his spirit remained unbroken. His eyes met hers across the hall, a silent plea. Don't surrender. The rival alpha gripped Lucian by the collar, yanking his head up for all to see. Your precious brother tried to play hero, he sneered. Now he is my hostage. Give me the Shadowborn, or he dies. The pack erupted, wolves snarling, the air thick with fury. Kale's control was fraying. "Release him," he thundered, but his wolf's bow kept him shackled to the floor. Every instinct screamed to fight, but the bond twisting his will to Arya chained him down. Arya's heart pounded, Lucian's life for hers. The choice should have been simple, but nothing was simple anymore. She glanced at Chaol, broken by her power yet burning with defiance, and something twisted inside her chest. Chaol met her gaze, his voice rough. "Don't even think about it. If you go to him, it won't save Lucian. He'll use you, and everything will fall." The rival alpha's laughter was a dagger. "You see, even your mate knows you are nothing but a prize to be claimed." "Mate," Arya stammered, her cheeks heating, though this was no time for such a revelation. Chaol's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. His wolf's growl rumbled low, primal. "You're mine, Arya, and I'll burn this world before I let him touch you." The tension between them was unbearable. Heat radiated in the air, dangerous and intoxicating. Arya's breath caught as Chaol leaned closer, despite the restraint of his wolf, his lips brushing the edge of her ear. "Don't give in to him. You're stronger than you know." Her pulse thundered. For one reckless heartbeat, their faces were a whisper apart, a near kiss charged with fire and defiance. Shadows flared at her back, flames crackled in his aura. Lucian groaned, breaking the moment. The rival alpha yanked him again, making him kneel. Enough games. The Shadowborn, or his throat. His claws pressed against Lucian's neck. Arya's trembling stopped. She straightened, her fear hardening into resolve. For the first time, her voice carried the unmistakable weight of command. "You will not take me, and you will not harm him." The rival alpha sneered. "And who will stop me? You?" Arya lifted her chin. The shadows rose like a storm around her, spilling across the floor in jagged waves. Her mark burned so fiercely it lit the hall in black fire. She turned, her gaze sweeping the stunned faces of Chaol's pack. "You follow me now," she declared. "If he wants war, then I will lead you into it." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even Chaol froze, shock flashing in his eyes, quickly followed by something else, something like pride. The rival alpha's grin faltered as the air thickened with her power. His warriors shifted uneasily, their confidence wavering. Arya stepped forward, shadows coiling around her like armor. "I will fight," she said, her voice ringing with finality, "and I will lead this pack myself." The hall trembled as if the prophecy itself had been set ablaze. The declaration still echoed through the hall. "I will fight, and I will lead this pack myself." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the blood moon rose. Its crimson glow spilled through the shattered windows of the great hall, painting the stone floor in liquid red. The rival alpha snarled, sensing the power swelling around Arya. His warriors shifted, hackles raised, unease rolling through their ranks like a bitter wind. Behind her, Chaol struggled to stand, the weight of his wolf's instinct bowing still pressing on his shoulders. Yet when he looked at her shadow mark blazing, her posture regal, her eyes filled with fire, he felt something foreign in his chest. Not just pride, not just fury, something dangerously close to reverence. The rival alpha's voice cracked the moment like a whip. "Then you'll die first." He lunged. The air split open. Shadows erupted from Arya, a tidal wave of black flames surging outward. The force flung warriors into the walls like ragdolls. Her body arched, her breath catching, and then the wolf came. It tore free of her in a roar that rattled the bones of every living creature present. Towering, colossal, its fur was woven of flame and darkness, its eyes two burning voids. The Shadowborn wolf. The prophecy made flesh. The battlefield trembled. Wolves dropped to their knees, unable to withstand the sheer gravity of its presence. The rival alpha faltered mid-strike, eyes widening with horror. Even Chaol's breath hitched, his wolf howling within. But this wolf was no ordinary spirit. It wasn't bound by her body. It wasn't bound at all. It circled her, massive and untamed, shadows flickering across the hall like wildfire. The ground cracked beneath its paws as though the blood moon itself had bent the world to her. Arya staggered, half in awe, half in terror. She could feel it. Its hunger, its rage, its ancient purpose. "We are one," it whispered through her blood. "No alpha commands us. No chain binds us." Kale forced himself upright, claws drawn, his voice low and urgent. "Arya, control it before it consumes everything," the rival alpha roared, rallying his men despite his fear. "Kill her, before it's too late!" Dozens of wolves surged forward. The Shadowborn wolf turned, and with a single swipe of its claws, unseen but devastating, warriors were torn apart, bodies hurled through the air, their screams lost in the roar of black fire. Kyle's pack stood frozen, torn between fear and awe. Their gazes shifted from Kyle, the alpha they had always known, to Arya, whose power now eclipsed everything they had believed. Arya raised a trembling hand. "Stop," she whispered. The wolf obeyed. For a fleeting moment she thought she had control. But then its head turned, toward Kyle. Her heart lurched. The beast growled, a sound so deep it made the stone walls quake. It lowered its massive head until its burning eyes locked on the alpha. Kyle bared his teeth, his wolf snarling, but even his strength wavered beneath that gaze. "Arya," he called, his tone a warning, a plea. The wolf didn't bow, it didn't submit. It towered. Arya's chest tightened as realization struck like lightning. This was the truth of the Shadowborn. It was not made to obey, not Kale, not any alpha. The colossal beast stepped closer, fire trailing its paws, the hall splitting with its weight. Kyle stood his ground, though sweat beaded at his temple. Arya reached out, shadows coiling around her fingers, desperate to pull it back. But the wolf's voice thundered in her skull. "We bow to none, not even him." With the blood moon blazing above, the Shadowborn wolf loomed over Kale, its growl promising either submission or his destruction. The Shadowborn wolf loomed above Kale, its breath searing heat into the air, its growl so deep the stones themselves shuddered. Its burning eyes locked on him not as prey, but as a challenge, an eternal rival that bowed to no alpha. Arya's chest heaved, her trembling hands lifted as she tried to tether the beast, but it pulsed through her veins, raw and untamed. Her voice cracked. "Please, stop." The wolf ignored her, shadows spilling like liquid fire across the floor. And Kale stepped forward. Every instinct screamed at him to kneel, to lower his head, to submit to this force older and greater than any alpha line. But Kale was not a man who bowed. His wolf snarled inside him, its defiance mirroring his own. He squared his shoulders, planting himself directly in the monster's path. "If you destroy me," he said, his voice carrying through the trembling hall, "you destroy her too." The wolf roared, the blast of it knocking warriors backward. Arya clutched her head as its power battered her senses. Her knees buckled, caught between Kale's determination and the wolf's fury. "Arya!" Kale's voice snapped like a whip. His eyes, burning gold, not with dominance, but with something rarer. Desperation. "You are not a weapon. You are not theirs. You are you. Fight it before it devours everything you are." For the first time, the Shadowborn hesitated. The beast's head lowered, as though testing her will. But before Arya could seize the moment, the sound of shattering chains echoed through the chamber. From the rival Alpha's camp, a figure stumbled in, bloodied, beaten, but alive. Lucian. His wrists were raw from shackles, his chest slick with wounds, but his eyes burned with urgency as he staggered toward her. "Arya." His voice was hoarse, broken, yet cutting. "Don't trust him." Her heart lurched. "Lucian!" He coughed, nearly collapsing. Kale's jaw clenched, his attention flicking between his brother and the wolf, threatening to tear him apart. Lucian forced the words out, each syllable like a blade. "Kale was going to sell you. After the auction, said you were useless, worthless, just coin to him." The words struck harder than any claw. Arya froze, the wolf within her answering with a growl so furious the floor cracked beneath its weight. Her mind spun back, to Kale's disdain, his cruel tests, the way he had thrown her into the pack house like unwanted property. Kale's face darkened, his eyes widening. Lucien, stop. But Lucien collapsed, unconscious. The silence that followed was deafening. Arya's gaze snapped to Kale, betrayal burning hotter than any flame. Is it true? Kale didn't answer. His lips parted, his throat worked, but no words came. That silence was enough. The shadow-born wolf's head turned, its massive form shuddering with her fury. Shadows bled across the hall, swallowing torches, painting Kale in a crown of fire and darkness. Tears blurred Arya's vision, but her voice was steel. Then you are no different from them. The wolf roared, its claws tearing through the stone, and lunged toward Kyle. The shadow-born wolf, fueled by Arya's rage, turns its full might upon Kyle, its own alpha, promising either his death or her final corruption. The shadow-born wolf struck like lightning, its colossal paw crashing down where Kale stood. Stone exploded beneath the blow, dust filling the air. Warriors scattered, crying out, their alpha swallowed by the fury of shadow and flame. But Kyle did not fight back. His golden eyes shone through the haze, fixed on Arya, not with defiance, but with something she had never seen in him before. Submission. If this is what I deserve? His voice was low, raw, each syllable trembling with conviction as the wolf's claws ripped into his shoulder. Then take it. Tear me apart, Arya. I won't stop you. The wolf roared in response, claws digging deeper, fire burning across his skin. Yet he did not resist. His wolf howled inside him, begging for survival, but Kyle only lifted his chin, blood streaming from his mouth. Arya's heart slammed in her chest. The wolf within her reveled in his helplessness, her fury feeding its hunger. Betrayal still burned, the memory of Lucian's words, Kale's silence, the cruel truth that he had once seen her as coin, and nothing more. But then she heard him, not with her ears, but deep inside, like a whisper carried through her very soul. I deserve this, but you don't deserve to be a monster. Her breath caught. The wolf froze, claws poised for the killing strike. Its burning eyes, her eyes, flickered with confusion. Never had an alpha failed to resist. Never had prey accepted death so willingly. Arya stumbled backward, clutching her chest as if trying to drag her heart back from the abyss. Stop, she whispered, her voice shaking. Please, just stop. The wolf's growl faltered, its massive body shivering as her will cracked through the storm of rage. Slowly, agonizingly, the shadows receded, curling back into her veins until she collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. Kyle fell with her, bloodied, broken, but alive. He dragged himself across the ruined floor, his hand trembling as it reached toward her, not to command, not to restrain, but simply to touch. Arya flinched, caught between fury and something deeper, more fragile. You lied to me, she whispered, tears streaking her ash-stained face. You would have sold me. His jaw tightened, guilt etched in every line of his face. I was a fool, a coward who couldn't see what you were, but I would never give you up now. Her wolf stirred again, restless, snarling at his words. But before she could answer, the air split open. A rift tore across the chamber like glass shattering in reverse, shadows pouring from its core. A chill swept through the ruins, deeper and darker than anything she had ever felt. Warriors dropped to their knees, their wolves whimpering, tails tucked in primal terror. From the abyss stepped a figure cloaked in black flame, his eyes voids of endless night. The very air bent around him, thick with the weight of ancient dominion. The Shadowborn awakens, the figure intoned, his voice a thunderous echo that rattled bone. His gaze pinned Arya, and her blood turned to ice. And with her, my bloodline returns. Kale forced himself upright, growling even as his body trembled. Who are you? The figure's lips curled in something between pride and hunger. I am the Shadow King, he declared, his presence suffocating, irresistible. Father of all wolves. And she... his hand lifted toward Arya, as if claiming her by right, is mine. The Shadow King emerges from the rift, his power dwarfing even the Shadowborn. Arya is torn between Chaol's bloodied confession and the chilling truth. Her existence has summoned a being no alpha dares defy. The Shadowborn wolf struck like lightning, its colossal paw crashing down where Chaol stood. Stone exploded beneath the blow, dust filling the air. Warriors scattered, crying out, their alpha swallowed by the fury of shadow and flame. But Chaol did not fight back. His golden eyes shone through the haze, fixed on Arya, not with defiance, but with something she had never seen in him before: submission. If this is what I deserve... His voice was low, raw, each syllable trembling with conviction as the wolf's claws ripped into his shoulder. Then take it! Tear me apart, Arya, I won't stop you. The wolf roared in response, claws digging deeper, fire burning across his skin. Yet he did not resist. His wolf howled inside him, begging for survival, but Chaol only lifted his chin, blood streaming from his mouth. Arya's heart slammed in her chest. The wolf within her reveled in his helplessness, her fury feeding its hunger. Betrayal still burned. The memory of Lucian's words, Chaol's silence, the cruel truth that he had once seen her as coin and nothing more. But then she heard him. Not with her ears, but deep inside, like a whisper carried through her very soul. I deserve this, but you don't deserve to be a monster. Her breath caught. The wolf froze, claws poised for the killing strike. Its burning eyes, her eyes, flickered with confusion. Never had an alpha failed to resist. Never had prey accepted death so willingly. Arya stumbled backward, clutching her chest as if trying to drag her heart back from the abyss. Stop, she whispered, her voice shaking. Please, just stop. The wolf's growl faltered, its massive body shivering as her will cracked through the storm of rage. Slowly, agonizingly, the shadows receded, curling back into her veins until she collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. Chaol fell with her, bloodied, broken, but alive. He dragged himself across the ruined floor, his hand trembling as it reached toward her, not to command, not to restrain, but simply to touch. Arya flinched, caught between fury and something deeper, more fragile. You lied to me, she whispered, tears streaking her ash-stained face. You would have sold me. His jaw tightened, guilt etched in every line of his face. I was a fool, a coward who couldn't see what you were, but I would never give you up now. Her wolf stirred again, restless, snarling at his words. But before she could answer, the air split open. A rift tore across the chamber like glass shattering in reverse, shadows pouring from its core. A chill swept through the ruins, deeper and darker than anything she had ever felt. Warriors dropped to their knees, their wolves whimpering, tails tucked in primal terror. From the abyss stepped a figure cloaked in black flame, his eyes voids of endless night. The very air bent around him, thick with the weight of ancient dominion. The Shadowborn awakens, the figure intoned, his voice a thunderous echo that rattled bone. His gaze pinned Arya, and her blood turned to ice. And with her, my bloodline returns. Chaol forced himself upright, growling even as his body trembled. Who are you? The figure's lips curled in something between pride and hunger. I am the Shadow King, he declared, his presence suffocating, irresistible. Father of all wolves, and she, his hand lifted toward Arya, as if claiming her by right, is mine. The Shadow King emerges from the rift, his power dwarfing even the Shadowborn. Arya is torn between Chaol's bloodied confession and the chilling truth. Her existence has summoned a being no alpha dares defy. The ruined hall shook with the weight of his presence. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the ground, licking the stone like hungry tongues of flame. The Shadow King stood at the center of it all, towering and impossible, his aura pressing down until every wolf in Chaol's pack bowed unwillingly, whimpering under an ancient power that dwarfed even the strongest alpha. Only two resisted, Chaol, bloodied but unbroken, and Arya, whose breath came in sharp gasps as her wolf quivered inside her, torn between fear and recognition. The king's eyes, twin voids burning with black fire, landed on her. Daughter of shadow, my blood made flesh, you were never theirs to sell, never theirs to break. You are mine, my heir. The word slammed into her like a physical blow. Arya staggered back, clutching her marked wrist as the seal of the Shadowborn pulsed, answering his call. The power thrummed in her veins, pulling her toward him like a tide she could not resist. Chaol snarled, stepping between them, even though his body trembled with exhaustion. She isn't yours. She belongs to no one. His wolf pressed at the edge of his control, golden eyes blazing with desperation. The king tilted his head, amused. Brave words from a creature already broken. His hand lifted lazily, and Chaol's body slammed to the ground as if chained by invisible shackles. The alpha roared, straining, but the weight of ancient dominion held him down. Stop! Arya cried, rushing forward, only to freeze when the king's gaze snapped to hers. You feel it, don't you? His voice slithered through her mind, curling like smoke. The hunger in your blood, the power to make kings kneel. I can give you everything, freedom, strength, a throne carved in shadow. With me, no alpha will ever dare cage you again. The seal burned hotter, whispering promises. She could almost see it, herself crowned in flame and darkness, the world at her feet, her wolf unchained at last. But then Chaol's voice broke through, hoarse and raw. Arya, don't. He dragged himself up despite the invisible pressure, blood dripping down his jaw. His eyes locked with hers, desperate, terrified. He'll consume you. That's not freedom. It's a leash you'll never break. Her chest constricted. The wolf inside her howled, split between two masters, the bond tugging her toward Chaol and the bloodline chaining her to the king. Then another voice joined, weaker but firm. Lucian stumbled into the hall, wounded yet unyielding, his sword dripping with blood from the battle outside. He stood at Chaol's side, glaring at the Shadow King. You'll have to kill us both before you take her. The king's laugh echoed like thunder. Two alphas, both weak, both blind. Do you think your loyalty matters? He snapped his fingers. Chaol's body convulsed, slammed flat against the stone, a dark blade of shadow forming above his chest, trembling, ready to pierce his heart. Arya screamed, rushing forward, but the king's voice cut through her like a blade. Kneel, daughter, he commanded, his power curling around her bones. Bow to me and I will spare him. Refuse, and watch your alpha die. The shadows thickened, the blade lowering closer to Chaol's chest. His golden eyes locked with hers one last time, filled not with fear, but with a silent plea. Arya's knees buckled as the seal on her wrist flared, demanding a choice. Arya stands frozen, torn between her bloodline and her heart, forced to decide, kneel to the Shadow King, or watch Chaol's life extinguished before her eyes. The hall was suffocating with silence, every shadow stretching toward Arya as though the walls themselves bent to the Shadow King's will. The obsidian blade hovered a breath above Chaol's chest, the cruel weight of inevitability pressing down on all of them. Arya's knees trembled. The seal burned hotter than fire, chains of invisible command tightening around her throat. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself, eyes downcast, every motion a picture of surrender. The king's lips curved into a dark, triumphant smile. Yes, he purred, shadow flames rising higher. Bow to me, and embrace what you were born to be. But just before her knees touched the floor, Arya shut her eyes and did the unthinkable. She turned her wolf inward. Agony ripped through her body. Instead of channeling the king's command outward, she crushed the bond with her own essence, clawing at the roots of shadow in her veins and snapping them one by one. Power erupted in silence. No explosion, no flames, just a collapsing void that shattered the king's tether to her. The seal on her wrist cracked like broken glass, splintering light across the hall. The shadows recoiled, writhing in pain, and for the first time, the Shadow King's smirk faltered. What? His voice thundered with disbelief. Arya swayed, her body trembling violently. Every heartbeat felt like it was draining her dry, life force bleeding away with each breath. Still, she raised her chin, meeting his eyes with a defiance sharper than any blade. I am not yours. I will never be yours. The king roared, shadows flaring outward, but his grip on her was gone. Cale staggered upright, freed from the crushing weight, his golden eyes wide in horror as he saw her crumple. He caught her before she hit the stone, gathering her against his chest. Her skin was pale, her breath shallow, as though death itself was creeping in. Why would you do this? His voice broke, his hands trembling where they held her face. Arya's lips curved weakly, a shadow of her usual fire. Because no alpha commands me, not even him. Kyle's chest heaved, his wolf snarling and whimpering at once, torn between rage and despair. And then the words ripped from him, unguarded, raw. I love you, Arya. Spirits help me. I love you. Her eyes fluttered, glassy with pain, but her smile deepened at his confession. Finally, you admit it. Kyle pressed his forehead to hers, his tears hot against her skin. Stay with me. Please, don't leave me. But her body grew colder, her pulse weaker until it was barely there. And then, her wolf howled. The sound tore through the air like a storm, not outside her but from within, resonating deep in Cale's chest. He gasped as shadows and fire coiled from her fading form into him, wrapping around his golden aura. His own wolf surged, colliding with hers, twisting, merging until two heartbeats thundered as one. The pack collapsed to their knees, sensing the impossible. Two wolves bound, fused, neither dominant nor submissive, but eternal. The Shadow King recoiled, eyes blazing with fury. No, this cannot be. Kyle clutched Arya's fading body, his wolf now forever bound to hers, but her eyes remained closed, unmoving, as though her sacrifice had cost her everything. Cale's arms shook as he held her limp body. Her heartbeat was faint, her skin cold as marble. Around them, the battlefield lay silent. Warriors, wolves, even the rival Alpha, all staring at the impossible fusion of light and shadow that rippled from Cale's aura. Yet none of it mattered to him. Not if Arya didn't open her eyes. Arya, he whispered, his voice ragged, pressing his forehead to hers. His wolf howled within him, half shadow, half golden flame, desperate for her soul to answer. Come back to me, please. I can't lead without you. And then, her chest rose, slowly, trembling, as though her body fought against the grave itself. Shadows coiled across her skin, etching faint markings like liquid obsidian along her collarbone. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing not silver, not gold, but a molten black fire rimmed in light. Gasps spread across the warriors. Some backed away, others fell to their knees instinctively. Shadow Queen, one elder whispered, voice breaking with reverence and fear. Arya pushed herself up, Cale steadying her. Her body felt different, stronger, sharper, her veins humming with ancient power that did not consume her, but bent to her will. The Shadow King's bond was gone, but the inheritance of his blood remained. She was no longer useless, no longer bound. She was reborn. She looked at Cale, who stared at her as though seeing the moon for the first time. He was the Alpha who never bowed, the wolf feared across kingdoms. And yet, slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself onto one knee before her. Not forced by dominance, not broken by power, but willingly. Not my Alpha, Cale said, voice steady despite the emotion thickening it. My queen. The pack erupted into whispers, awe, and tears. Rival Alphas, sensing the inevitable, bowed their heads as well. For the first time in history, fractured packs bent to one leader, united not by chains, but by choice. Arya's chest tightened. Once sold as useless, discarded, treated like property, she now stood at the center of a storm of loyalty, power, and love. And at her side was the only Alpha who dared bare his throat not to her shadow, but to her heart. Cale rose and took her hand. For the first time, his golden eyes softened completely. Together, he said, light and shadow. She nodded, and their wolves howled in perfect harmony, shaking the very mountains. Peace felt almost within reach. The war had ended, the packs had united, and destiny had been rewritten. Arya lifted her gaze to the horizon, a faint, proud smile curling her lips. But then, a whisper coiled through the void, soft, cruel, and unmistakable. "This isn't over." Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing as shadows stirred faintly in the distance. The Shadow King's voice. Though Arya rises as the Shadow Queen and unites the packs with Chaol by her side, the lingering whisper of the Shadow King teases that his defeat was only the beginning.